an Gildó Chis bawalum brichas a go bhhail don na Harry agus bawalum fáilte a chur rih an cinna a rinne an Rhine agus chun na scolanna a oscailt an seachtain seo. And I certainly think that those movements were certainly welcome by all. I want to just say that in terms of the recent decision for the Leaving Cert students, I welcome the certainty that it has given the 60,000 students who are impacted upon by the pandemic and indeed the school closures and lack of in-class tuition. But I'm just wondering, you know, in terms of the choices offered, you know, we have three different choices offered, and I anticipate that that's going to cause some difficulty within our schools in terms of organisation, management. And I'm just wondering, has the Department of Education looked at the possibility of recruiting extra teachers on a temporary basis to make sure that our students have the optimum benefit? Because, as I say, many of them have been impacted adversely. And I feel that, you know, the fact they missed 5 months of last year, 2 months of this academic year, there needs to be some level of greater supports given to them. And I would ask that question, you know, has there been any planning there? I do feel, as I say, that it's also going to create problems in terms of overburdening class teachers who are now trying to deal with maybe 3 cohorts within the one classroom. Those sitting the traditional Leaving Cert, those taking the accredited grades, and those taking the combination. So, look, there's stress and difficulties there and pressures put on, and we need to make sure that our students come out of this better than ever, and that the disruption is made up for, really, as much as we can possibly do. So I just ask on that what has been done, or are there any plans? Then in terms of the report, the Joint Committee's report on the impact of COVID-19 on primary and secondary education, it was identified that there is a disparity between the funding for primary level and second level schools, as well as a disparity in school leadership posts. Have any steps been taken or progress towards ending these disparities? And has any assessment been made of the short-term funding needs of schools at both primary and second levels to allow for the safe and continued reopening? And my final question then is, in terms of the possibility of future school closures and the likelihood of some students being forced to self-isolate or restrict their movements, has there been any consideration given to the development of an online learning programme to include supports to disadvantaged students with regards to accessing digital services and adequate broadband, which is an issue for many communities throughout the state?
Minister.
Thanks very much, Deputy. Just in terms of additional resources within the schools, particularly for the Leaving Certificate students, just to acknowledge, you know, from the outset, we were more than cognizant of that moving forward this year. And in fact, we had over 1,000 additional posts being made available for second level, and that has been you know, a huge addition in terms of support within our schools. In terms of the overburdening of teachers and teachers dealing with, we'll say, you know, cohorts of students who wish to take the written exams in June and students who are opting for the accredited grades process, just to acknowledge we were very mindful in terms of trying to, you know, accommodate, I suppose, both within the class, and notwithstanding the superb efforts that have been made by teachers in terms of you know, remote learning, and the huge demands that are placed on teachers even now, and from an in-person point of view, I suppose, operating in a COVID-19 atmosphere. I absolutely do accept that, but in an effort to accommodate that, for example, in relation to the accredited grades process, we'll say all information in relation to, you know, the teachers' estimated marks and all of that will not be uploaded by the teachers until you know, quite significantly into the month of May. So it affords students the opportunity, you know, whether they're opting for the written exams in June or whether they're opting for the the accredited grades process to continue their learning and for the teachers to continue their teaching, as it were, and that there would not be a conflict in terms of you know, the need for students to be wholly involved in the learning processes within the classroom. And I think that accommodation in terms of the latest date possible for the provision of estimated grades, you know, is very, very helpful in that respect. In terms of funding and issues of funding, as regards your, you know, the report that has been made by yourselves, just to acknowledge that, you know, over the last 2 years or so, like, there has been significant funding go into the schools in terms of capitation. There's two types of capitation. Obviously, there's the you know, the capitation for the day-to-day running of the schools and the ancillary grant. And last year there was a 5%, there was a 2.5% increase in budget in terms of capitation, and there was a 5% increase in 2019. But notwithstanding that, all additional measures, we'll say, this year that were required for schools, you know, significant funding from a COVID point of view was poured into schools so that schools would not be at a disadvantage. In other words, that all schools would be able to meet the challenge of COVID-19 equally. So significant funding, you know, whether it's 56 million made available for PPE and hand sanitizer and all of that, 34.7 million being made available for enhanced cleaning in our schools and all of that. In terms of the disparity that you referenced between primary and post-primary, I think, you know, it's self-evident that there is a very, you know, definite difference between primary schools and second level in terms of, you know, I suppose on a unit base, in terms of that. I suppose post-primary schools are larger, they have a smaller PTR, but they have more specialist rooms and, you know, bigger, so therefore their buildings are bigger and all of that. So, you know, there is a higher cost of post-primary, you know, for heating, lighting, cleaning, and all of that. So there is a disparity. The disparity that exists there exists, you know, in that respect, taking on board all of those specific issues. In terms of the consideration for the need for additional AP1 posts and all of that, just to acknowledge that yesterday the announcement was made in terms of, I suppose, posts within the DESH scheme, where the requirement for a deputy principal has reduced from 700 to 600, and I think that's a very positive step forward in terms of DESH schools. But equally so, the number of leadership posts and posts of responsibility in schools are constantly being kept under review and are regularly the subject of discussions with school staff and school representatives and that. And as I said, you know, we will continue to do that, and we have made specific strides in that respect in relation to our DESH schools.
Okay, thank you very much.